Charlie Kilo Bravo, Kevin of Croydon, Tango Uniform X-Ray, Graham, Hotel Kilo, Steve, Sierra Juliet, Laurie, and Charlie Kilo Lima, Kevin. I don't have a lot to report. I'm working on this slasher. It turns out I've got a spare motor for this thing. It's a Villiers, and I was trying to figure out the carburettor on the one that was found. Part of it's missing, and then I remembered I've got just such a motor in the other shed, so I dug it out, and it is that very motor. So now we know what to reconstruct, and I mean we. Over to you, Kevin. VK3CKB. Leave a pause, please, Kevin. VK3 X-ray uniform.
Nobody else heard there. VK3XU, VK3CKB. Good morning, all. Yeah, quite a pleasant sort of a day. Yeah, I didn't watch any press conferences, but I got a message on my phone from my son saying that the lockdown was over tonight. Apparently one restriction is that you're only allowed to have 5 people allowed to your home until Friday week, but the schools and the retails go back, they reopen tomorrow. So I don't know what other details there might be hidden in there. Anyway, it's good news that things might start going back to normal. My wife and I, we had a little lockdown project. We decided to paint the front door. It's a solid door, but it had veneer on the outside, and it was a bit chipped and knocked around, so it was looking a bit tatty. So I got to it with some polyfiller and filled up the gaps and sanded it back, and we've painted it Brunswick green, which matches the planter box on the front porch. It reminded me of the song back from 1956, What's Behind the Green Door. So, yeah. Anyway, oh, yeah, thanks for the guys, Drew and a couple of others who mentioned last week about the problem with my daughter's lawnmower not stopping. I've got an almost identical mower here, and I had a look at the mechanism which you described, where you turn the throttle down and a little disc part rotates and shorts out a contact, which it kills the ignition circuit. So I can quite clearly see it's a simple little mechanism. I can see how it works on my mower, but I haven't been back to my daughter's one to see what the problem is because of the lockdown mainly. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was interesting. Jim 3ZKK apparently was listening to the net the morning that we talked about it, and he sent me some emails with some more details on what the problem might be, and yeah, and how it all works. So much appreciated. What else? Yeah, my wife and I, we had our 49th wedding anniversary on Friday, and we went out in the morning to see the movie The War with Grandpa. It's about an elderly guy who moves in with his daughter and her family, and there's a 12-year-old boy, and the grandpa moves he takes over the 12-year-old boy's bedroom, and the boy has to go up into the attic along with the rats and birds and things that come in. So it was quite a good movie. I can recommend it. All the different antics they got up to, so that the boy can try and get his bedroom back. Oh yeah, then we went out to a restaurant up at Churnside, and that was when the lockdown was announced. That just came in on Friday. Anyway, who's next? Oh, Graham. I don't think I've spoken to you before, Graham, or if I have, I've forgotten. VK3TUX, VK3CKB.
VK3CKB, VK3TUX, thank you very much. Yeah, look, I'm just sitting here listening to you chatting there. You're talking about painting your door green, on the old fun green door. Now, I was reading on Charlie Williams' book, a couple actually, but one of them was through Crick and Watson and DNA. Now, in Cambridge University in Britain, some of the lecturers or teachers there who are allocated digs to stay at, to live in, they have a green door. And all sorts of stuff happened behind those screen doors. And I'm wondering that in the period when they had meetings and everything else, but that's what may not be getting referred to. But anyway, that's just by the by. I thought I'd throw that in while I was here. Yeah, right, I've done a few things this morning. Go to the spiders, the bums rush out of here. Don't need them too much at the moment. Those weeds, stuff with the zucchini. Been very busy. I was up at 2 and going for this morning. And it's all done. Now I've got a project on the bench, which I have. I've always got projects on the bench, of course. Just like Marathon here. I look out the window and I think there's projects going down. There's a tractor sitting there under covers looking at me thinking, come and finish me off, so I could do that someday. But immediately, just for a break in between what fully transmittable things, I'm looking at a radiation detector, which should be extremely interesting. I look at the information here in the drawings, and I'm going to be fine with that. And I'll be doing a base test on that with alpha particles from americium, and then I'll start looking at what else I can do with it, and if I can, how I can do that better, improve the sensitivity, etc. of it. It can be read either by Crow, or there's also a circuit where you can put in an audio stage on it, which is a delay and a comparator to give you the clicks as you would on a Geiger counter, should you so desire to do that. I don't know whether I'll do it or not. Sort of close to doing it, really going first. As I say, very, very simple. The base amplifier is only 2 transistors, and the 549C low noise. You've got to use no noise on these things to make them work properly. So that's my experiment that I'm going through at the moment, which I will have done shortly. Yeah, small group. I didn't realise when you're giving a group out, Drew, that I was going to be second. Crikey. But anyway, look, I'll throw it over to, I know you can't hear me, Stephen. I'll throw it over to VK3HK from VK3TUX.
Yes, it's your go, Steve. Come back from the laundry, Steve. Come to the transmitter and talk to us. Rightio. Will you take it, Laurie, and put it over to Steve?
Okay, no problem, Drew. VK3 TUX, VK3XJ. Thanks very much for letting me in, and good morning to all from Death Valley, where it's quite warm and fine outside. Yes, I've been fairly busy this morning in the making up a couple of modules that I designed yesterday. I did manage to get those modules down to postage stamp size, and I'm just building a couple of the bits of hardware at the moment, and wrote the software for it last night. And it's been a very interesting exercise because of the way these things are set up. It's the first time I've ever had to operate with not just bits and bytes but nibbles this time. I've never had any experience of doing that before, but I'm starting to learn very, very quickly now. The reason being that the standard of which these things are made, there's an organisation that made a standard set of codes that all the manufacturers follow, and but the problem is that when the standard first came out, it was a 4-bit standard. Well, of course, all the functions now have gone up to 8-bit, and that has complicated things considerably, because they still for some reason insist on downward compatibility or backward compatibility to take into account the legacy circuits. But no, it's all very interesting, coming along fairly well at this point in time. Not much else to report from here apart from that. I do have to get stuck into the lawns, which I'll do eventually. But I've got another attack of sciatica I've had for the past couple of days, and that makes moving around a little bit painful. So anyway, getting used to it, these things sort of happen. Okay, Drew, on your projects there, and good to find out that you've sorted that problem too out, Kevin, CKD, with the lawnmower. At least I think you said you'd sorted it out when you knew what it was. Good morning to you also, Jim, if you're listening. Note that you do listen quite frequently. As I said, not a lot from here, so with that, if Steve is out of the laundry, I'll put it back to you there, Steve, if you're there. VK3 HK to take it. This is VK3SJ, and if there's no reply, it goes over to you, Kevin, VK3CKL. Thanks for doing it also, Drew.
Okay, well, I am here. I've just noticed I've got some swar. Why have I got swar? Must be a flock of magpies on the... Oh, I got the wrong tapping. Ah, silly boy, I'm on the wrong tapping. Ah, dear. Well, I'm not about to change it. Not while I've got things on. So there we are. Anyway, this is VK3HK. I wasn't in the laundry. To and fro between the front door and the kitchen. Glenda's just got back from shopping. She had a pile of stuff. So, I can actually hear you this morning, Graham. Not a huge signal, but I can hear you. So, gradual improvements. Thanks very much for those Jeep photos. Very interesting. I mentioned that those fellows that were going down the slope into looked like a creek bed or something. The first time we tackled the Betka River crossing down in Croydon National Park down there, Malakuta, the banks were rather like that. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. It wasn't sand, it was sort of a gravelly consistency. And it didn't matter if you put your brakes on. The slope was so extreme. We just basically slid down. Dear, fun and games. Quite a different Jeep. Those Jeeps would have been built like, very sturdily, I would imagine. Thicker metal, heavier metal, chassis and dial works. Whereas the Jeep, built for modern conditions, not for participating in a war. So there we are. Now, we've all been released, or we will be tonight, released from lockdown. Well, there you go. Now, I take this as recognition of the fact that the whole bloody thing was a waste of time and totally unneeded, completely unneeded. And I tell you what, all the people who have lost business over this, the florists, the restaurateurs, etc., 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 not only lost business but wasted money on stock that's gone off. I'll bet that they're suitably impressed as well. Yes, and finally, there's some talk about establishing a purpose-built quarantine area, but that'll be a bloody great bun fight. No one will be able to agree on anything, so more fun and games. Okay, what else? I don't know, been pretty slow here too. Been doing a bit of work outside, rearranging the backyard. I've removed most of my grapevines. It's been a terrible year this year for grapes, absolutely shocking. I've kept two. I've got one vine out there which I planted in, when was it, 1964 I put it in, so it's a fairly old vine. A black muscatel, and bears extremely well. Fabulous fruit. Lots of fruit on it this year, but it's taking forever to ripen. Normally we have tons of grapes by this stage of the game, but they're all still green as. So not much fun there. What else? Decided I'm going to make another bench, Drew. Done a lot of rearranging of things in the backyard, and I built some outdoor furniture. I don't know, probably about the time that I planted this grapevine, and it's getting a bit long in the tooth, and Glenda has been at me to get rid of it. So I was out there looking at it. It's built of pretty solid sort of stuff. And I thought, I can't bring myself to chuck all this away or burn it or whatever. So I got in late yesterday afternoon and started drawing up some. Now this is one thing which we did learn at school. Despite the fact that I didn't do metal work, we did woodwork, and mechanical drawing was part of the deal. So I've drawn up some stuff, and I'm going to put together for myself another bench, which will be an outside bench. Oftentimes, I've got some work out there, and I think to myself, it's just creating a damn great mess for myself in here. This would be better off outside, so I'll get myself an old vise from somewhere and mount that on the thing, and that'll be my messy outside type bench. I think that's a good idea. Okie dokie, 15 minutes past 11. I'll shoot it across to you, Kevin. VK3CKL to take it. This is VK3HK.
Good, thanks, Steve, and good morning to you, and also to all others taking part, VK3HK, VK3CKL. You mentioned high SWR there, Steve, and I'm not sure if you're running an amplifier, but your signal seems to be a few dBs down on where it normally would be, but maybe I'm mistaken. Occasionally I've been mistaken during my lifetime. Anyway, thanks for looking after the session, Drew. And Kevin CKB first on after yourself. And okay, on the anniversary and the movie there, Kevin, and I watched a movie over the weekend, Saturday and Sunday. I think I watched it in a couple of bits, which I've seen, most of you have seen many years ago, and I'd never bothered to watch it, but Mrs. Miniver wasn't burned. It's split a bit of time amongst all the other stuff that was on. Graham, I can copy Graham to a degree through Paul's SDR, no usable copy on my own antenna. The antenna here this morning is slightly different configuration again from where it has been, or a different iteration of the same piece of wire. I'll come to the conclusion after various forms of inverted L that I've had here over the years, probably close to 10 different versions, all a quarter wavelength long, inverted V, inverted U, inverted L's, whatever. And this morning I had my son Philip here, and he altered the one point of support of the antenna and pushed up a bit higher, and hasn't it may have made a fraction of a dB difference, but certainly nothing startling or easily recognisable. And in time we'll tell anyway. And I've come to the conclusion that a quarter wave piece of wire, if you're feeding it with using the same ground system, which I have been here, and all the different variations, using the iron roof of the upstairs section as the ground plane. And if you're doing that, it doesn't really matter where the highest point of the antenna is. If the highest point of the antenna or of the wire remains the same, it doesn't matter whether it's near the feed point or far end of the antenna or anywhere in between. It makes very little difference to the result. But anyway, I'll try it for a few days and see how it goes. I've got one other version of one other antenna system I can try here, which I might get round to doing shortly, but see how this one goes for a while. Okay, and the grape, Steve, and the bench plans, and all the money wasted with these lockdowns and opening up and closing down again, just not a joke at all. Daniel Andrews should be the member for Dandenong, because if he was a member for Dandenong, he'd be Dan D. Nong, would be his title. Anyway, let's see what else to report on. Your plans there and work there, Laurie, and quite good copy on yourself on the antenna, but as I say, not much difference to why it has been in the recent past. I guess you've all seen the reports on the news services of all the snow in various countries of Europe and the States and so forth, and I guess that's all part of global warming. Anyway, back to you, Drew, VK3XU, VK3CKL.
Thank you, Kevin. Any others wishing to join? VK3CKL, VK3 X-ray uniform. I have to turn the fan off because, well, as you know, it modulates the transmitter. So if you hear little plonk noises, that's the sweat dripping on the bench. Gets hot in here. The Green Door, I remember that song, Kevin. We never did find out what was behind the Green Door. Brunswick Green, it's a very easy colour to get. Even in Aldi's, they have this German paint. You can get it in black, white, grey, battleship grey that is, or Brunswick green. And the Brunswick green is very handy because a lot of things, it's a suitable colour. You know, if you paint a garden implement or an engine or something like that, it's the right colour. Could you tell me again, or tell us again, please, Kevin, CKB, that program, the film about the boy's bedroom and Granddad trying to get it back? That sounds like it might be a good watch. And the film we were talking about before, Graham, with the Jeep in it, it doesn't star in the show, but there's a Jeep in it, is The Hell Drivers. It's a hell of a good film, very gritty. There's a fellow in there called Wilfred Lawson. Steve, look out for him. He's the man that teaches Stanley Baxter how to drive the truck. And he was a very much loved actor in his time. His contemporaries and colleagues all loved him. He listened to his voice. He's got an actorly voice, but in this film he's just, you know, one of the blokes, the workers. He's been put off the road by the police, so he's working in the office or something for the moment. Wilfred Lawson. Steve, you don't seem to think in a very scientific way. You've been caught in the same trap as the pub loudmouth, the pub bore, the pub know-it-all, where they'll say what you've said about this lockdown. It's being a waste of effort. It reminds me of a story my father-in-law told me. He was at a council meeting and he happened to be there when one of the councillors complained about this stop sign that was put up. They had a dangerous intersection in Caulfield, always having a prang, and fences were being knocked down on a regular basis. And they put a stop sign on one direction of the intersection. No traffic lights in those days. I remember when it was just a stop sign. And when they put the stop sign in, there were no more accidents. And this councillor complained it was a waste of money. We put that stop sign up, and there were no more accidents. We had a lockdown, and there were no more cases. Today we're told there's no more cases, so it worked. I've said my bit. And if you want to have a go at me, do. Think scientifically. Back to you, Kevin. VK3CKB, VK3 X-ray uniform.
Yeah, VK3XU, VK3CKB. Yeah, the movie, it's called The War with Grandpa. We saw it at the Hoyts in Eastland. It was on Friday morning. It's probably still going, and there was no problem with social distancing. We were the only two in the theatre, so they ran the whole thing just for us. It was a Lux theatre too, with all the fancy seats and that. So yeah, it was quite good. I googled that song on my phone. Here we are. Yeah, I think apart from the old piano, I'm not sure what else is behind the green door. Yeah, that song only goes for about 2 minutes and 11 seconds, but I won't use my time. I don't think we're supposed to run music on the net. What else? Nothing much else from me. I do remember you, Graham, up in Chums Creek, so it's coming back to my ageing memory that I have spoken to you before. Yeah. That's enough from me, so I'll put it over to you there again, Graham, VK3TUX, VK3CKB.
Oh yeah, great. I was sitting here with my daughter, who was good enough to bring me out a cup of tea into my shack, and daydreaming a bit. All of a sudden you go, I'll have it over to Graham. Oh, you're breaking me. Yeah, well at this point in time, I'm a bit lost. Oh, by the way, that Teledrive is really, I have seen that. As a nice film, I didn't sort of appreciate it as much as you did, but I have seen it, along with a lot of other sort of rubbish that used to happen. Yeah, look, I'm not going to go too much further. I'll sort of shoot off and let you fellows keep on. Yeah, the Chiefs, I think that to Steve. I thought you might have been interested in that. I think one of the things that's interesting is that about 10 years ago, maybe more, the US Postal Service decided to try electric vehicles and had 500 electric Jeeps that run for quite some time as their experiment. But they found that they were just a bit impractical and discontinued the idea. But that's the way things go. Anyway, I'll throw it over now to you, Steve, the chief man himself, from VK3 TWX. I'll say good morning to everybody. Good morning all.
Okay, well, I'm here now. Once again. Okay. Now, if you check your estimator out, Kevin, you'll see that I'm back to what I normally am. No swah to speak of, and the correct power level, or the usual power level, let's put it that way. So, there we are, here, green doors, and whatever it was, Brunswick green. When I was a kid, I was aware of the fact that there were many, many, many things which were painted that colour green. And it used to irk me that there were so many damn things painted in that green colour. Not just buildings, but objects. I remember my father had an extension ladder, and even that was painted green, so Brunswick green. Oh dear. He got rid of it after a while. In fact, he gave it to me. He bought a nice shiny aluminium one. So I got the Brunswick green one, which did service up here for years and years and years and years and years, until unfortunately it succumbed to the rigours of time. It was a wooden one made out of Oregon. Pretty sure it was Oregon. An extension ladder, and that was really good. Very, very handy when we had heaps and heaps and heaps of big trees on the block. Not so many now. Yeah, but now I've got his aluminium ladder since he doesn't want it anymore. Poor old Dad. What else? I don't know. Yeah, good story about the stop sign. Oh dear. Certainly served a purpose, yes. All right, well, I don't know. I don't think I've got anything further. I'm furiously ripping music off CDs. Paul did this years ago. He had a huge collection of CDs and DVDs, and he finally got sick of all the things hanging around, so he ripped them all off. He's got them on hard disks, and that's what I'm in the throes of doing. Get rid of the things, take them down to the Brotherhood or whoever, the Salvos. In fact, I'm not going to. Glenda said she'd do it. She's got a whole pile of old books. So we'll get rid of them. Get rid of them. Don't need them. Taking up space. And I don't have a... At least I don't think I have. No, I don't have a... I have a DVD player. A DVD player in the lounge room. And that'll play CDs if I wanted to. But more often than not, if I wanted to play a CD, I'd just stick it in the computer and run it from there. The days of purpose-built CD players are long gone. So there we are. Oh, this I mentioned last week that I'd had huge luck, and I'd picked up a car stereo radio from the side of the road, and it goes like I bought one, etc., etc., etc. It actually has a CD player in it, which works. I put a disc in. Oh, now here's the thing. If I get rid of all my discs, I won't be able to play them on it. Perhaps I better keep a few of them. Keep the better ones. Oh dear. Yes, such is life. Time moves on. All right, as time's moving on, who do I put it by? Oh, the Juicy Fruit, VKS 3SJ. Yes, it's obvious you've been busy, Laurie, because you haven't rung me up recently. Okay, back to you, or over to you, VK3SJ. This is VK3HK.
Okay, thanks, Steve. VK3HK, VK3SJ. Yes, Steve, I put my phone down, forgot where it was, the battery went flat, and I only found it again yesterday. So you're not off the hook. Okay, a couple of things to comment on. First of all, when Chairman Dan decided to go ahead with his tennis and his world-class gold standard, shall we say, quarantine for it all, he was told at the beginning that there was a risk in doing it. His reply was, oh yes, but the economic risk to Melbourne would be much greater for us not having it. Well, guess what? His shutdown just cost $500 million, which is more than the tennis was going to bring in, and he's now got a bloody tennis that's showing the world how stupid he bloody well is. We had a call from Diane's sister who lives in Eastbourne. It's even made the news over there, what happened down here, and put it this way, they're pretty convinced that this state is run by an idiot. Incidentally, in Eastbourne at the moment, it is snowing. The first time in 200 years that it's actually snowing in Eastbourne. So, yep, that's global warming for you. And of course, half the United States, Texas and Florida, it's snowing there too. I couldn't believe it when I saw those pictures of Texas and it's all under snow. I don't think that's ever happened there, or it's been a long time since it's happened there as well. The song The Green Door, yes, you never got to find out what was behind the green door, but you'd probably remember this song, Kevin. There was a song by Phil Harris called The Thing, and we never got to find out what this thing is, but it must have been something pretty horrible, because the poor guy who found it, he got divorced by the wife, thrown out by the landlady, banned from the pub, and chucked out of the church. So whatever the hell this thing was, and it was referred to as a song as a boom boom boom, you know, you'll never get rid of the boom 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 no matter what you do. And the question is, what the hell was it? In fact, the song was even banned back in the 30s because it had some connotation, or some people thought it was referring to something pretty rude. But I'm sure you'd remember it, Kevin. You might even remember it also, Steve. And yes, I actually have a copy of it here. Quite interesting. What else is there to report? Well, nothing much else. As I said, I'm building the first two prototype of the smaller module, and hoping that that's going to run well and make sure that they're both talking to each other as well, which is very important as well for this particular project. So yes, it is a matter of keeping busy, and interestingly enough, also just getting back to the lockdown, what dickhead Daniel Andrews has done is effectively had 10 cases in the equivalent of Scotland and then closed the entire UK. That's what he's done. So anyone who wants to defend that bloody arsehole needs their head read. And he wants an award for excellent leadership, would you believe? Did you hear that one? Diane nearly vomited when she heard that on TV last night. Oh, he wants an award for leadership. He couldn't lead his way out of a wet paper bag. He is probably the most verminous politician that ever saw light in this country, and that includes chook pellets up in Queensland. Anyway, enough from me. Over to you, Kevin. VK3CKL to take it. VK3SJ. Thanks for doing the session, Drew, and we'll catch you all tomorrow.
Good, thanks, Laurie, and a little bit of a double with yourself there, and once I realised what it was, I've got rid of my double here, and once I realised what it was and I ignored the double, then I copy you quite okay, despite it all. VK3SJ, VK3CKL, and I'm glad you've shown yourself out as an admirer of our venerable leader there, Laurie. And that award, yeah, real joke. See what happens with that when the decision is made. Yeah, the song The Green Door, that's one we used to perform quite regularly down in St Kilda when I was playing down there. And The Thing, a chap by the name of George Thompson, I used to do a musical gig with at one of the nursing homes here in Dandenong, and The Thing was a regular one there. And no, I never found out what The Thing was. I can't remember it being banned. I think my first knowledge of that song was probably in the 40s or 50s, I think, having heard it the first time. Anyway, let's see, working back through the list, the snow, yes, saw all the pictures on TV of the snow in various areas, most of Europe and the US. But looking at the lightning map of the States too, not that I do that regularly, but in the past I have looked at the lightning map when I've been thinking of getting on 40 metres just to see what conditions at the far end might be. I looked at the lightning map about earlier last week, I think it was, and there's not a single lightning strike shown in the States for the whole area of the States, including Hawaii, and that was very unusual. Just was not a strike visible at all. Since then, there's been strikes, but not as in such great numbers as I normally would find in the past. The ones that I've seen recently have been down around the Florida and Texas area, but as I say, nothing like the common sort of situation, so that's a change too. Yeah, the lockdown and the change from the city motel to the Pullman at wherever it is, St Kilda or somewhere, I'm not sure. My youngest son is involved there. He's one of the security guard staff at that particular situation. I haven't spoken to him personally, but got the message passed on to me. Let's see. Something else I was going to mention. Yeah, well, I'll try one more crack at improving the signal in and out with this antenna is to try some radials in addition to the iron decking roof of the. I've tried that in the past without making much difference. In fact, it actually caused deterioration of the signal, I think. So I'll try that again. That's worth a shot once more. And something else I was going to comment on too. What the heck was it? No, God have mind. By doing the work my son Philip helped me with this morning and to shift the wire around a bit, it's enabled me to get some bits and pieces down which will assist me in getting an HF antenna up on the top of the tower, so looking forward to getting that done. Anyway, cheers all round. Thanks for looking after the session, Drew. Cheers to all listeners, and VK3CKL.
Righto, Kevin. I'll turn that fan off. Thank you, VK3CKL, VK3 X-ray uniform. While you've all been talking, I've been mending a pair of secateurs. I've had so many of these to repair that I've got a shoebox, believe it, please, a shoebox full of spare parts. I've managed to restore this pair, you know, the ordinary kind, but they get a hell of a workout around here, and another place in Wonga Park. It's been most interesting this morning. I don't think I have anything further to comment on. So we've had explanations of various things. Oh, good on you, Laurie, with the projects. Keep that soldering iron going. You're hooked on the smell of solder smoke, aren't you? That was a very appropriate name for a website, Solder Smoke. If anybody has not seen Solder Smoke, do look it up. Go into, I think it's on YouTube, Solder Smoke. It started a long time ago and it's got many followers. Our own Paul, VK3 Hotel November, has got quite a lot of his contributions there, photos of his projects, and they're inspiring. That'll do. Thanks for the session this morning. Cheerio, fellows. Enjoy your day. This is VK3 X-ray uniform.
VK3ZAF.
Hello, John. You're too late. We've just finished.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to tell Laurie, when he was transmitting, he must have had KHZ's SDR in the background, because it was like somebody was doubling with him, but I think that's probably what was happening.
That's right. We all heard it. Nobody commented.
Okay, thanks, because I missed what he said. I'm always interested in what Laurie says, but anyway, we'll catch you guys later. I'm trying to do two jobs at once at the moment, so I'll leave it until another day. Take care, everybody.
Yes, I forgot, Laurie. You left the SDR on, so you jammed your own signal.
Yes, I know. It's one of the problems with getting old, Drew. We just all have these senior moments. And I even saw the red light on that channel. Just to let you know, John, that the SDR goes into the queuing system of this desk. But those lines where it comes in can also go to air. And the situation is that the channel should have been in queue, where it wasn't. It was actually on air, and it was doubling the SDR back onto my own signal. But yes, I just made comment about stupid King Dan and his antics. Another $500 million out of the economy. Yeah, but it's not his money, not to worry. And our sister, well, Dane's sister, lives in Eastbourne. She was saying it's snowing there, and it's the first time in 200 years that that's happened. And just had to sort of explain to her that what dickhead Dan went and did was the same as having 10 cases in Scotland and then shutting down the whole UK, which is effectively what it did to protect his bloody precious tennis. Oh, big economic loss to Melbourne if that didn't go ahead. Well, what he just bloody well did cost the damn sight more. And I've just seen on the computer, and here's some good news for you, John. The federal government's blocked his bloody deal, his deal with the Chinese. How do you like that? The Roads and Belt deal will not be going ahead. It's going to be blocked by the federal government.
There you go. Now, there's something that Mrs. Thatcher said which will interest you. She said many years ago, socialism's a wonderful thing until you run out of somebody else's money.
Yes, and that's exactly right. Well, dickhead Dan has now run out of money because the Chinese are going to respond by this and saying, well, you can go and get stuffed. So all this money he's going to have to borrow to get the state out of trouble may not be forthcoming either. So he's now got a $1.5 trillion debt with no way of servicing it.
Yes, I know. Oh, God, it's a worry. Anyway, look, all good. The reason that I didn't come on this morning is I'm doing two things at once. I got my engine back finally. I got it back from the Mad Hatter, which is wonderful, and he seems to have done a pretty good job. So I'm ordering various gaskets and things that he was unable to supply. So that's all good. So that's what I'm up to at the moment. I bet I should continue with it because I want to get this order in and pick it up tomorrow. So look, I'll say goodbye to everybody, and yeah, the bits of it that I heard, because of course I was listening just on the 7300 and not the SDR, so Kevin, for argument's sake, was pretty much unintelligible. That is the transmission, not what he was saying. And with the SDR, of course, it makes virtually everybody's transmission completely readable. So a big debt of gratitude to Paul that makes all this work. Anyway, look, I'll see you later, guys. All good. Thank you so much, and we'll see you tomorrow.
John, why is he called the Mad Hatter? You see the bloke in Bayswater in the main road there?
No, it's the company that I used was Top Talk. They're in Rooks Road in Nunawading, and they do engine rebuilds. Admittedly, this particular one took exactly 6 months. Can you imagine that? 6 months to the day. I put it in on the 16th of September and I got it back yesterday, the 16th of February. However, he seems to have done a good job. And why is it called the Mad Hatter? Well, that's just a sobriquet that I put on there. What happens is that on these old engines, 35-year-old engines, you get a leak between the cylinder liner that came out of the factory and the cooling system underneath. And coolant leaks into the combustion chamber, and of course that's not very good for the operation of the vehicle. So the solution is either to throw away the car and buy something new, or if you're an aficionado like me, you want to continue on. So what they can do is they can bore out the old cylinder liner, and then they can put in a new cylinder liner which has got a ledge around the top of it. So I'm just trying to think the best way of explaining it. If you were to invert the cylinder liner it would look like a top hat, except that the brim is very, very narrow. And the brim on this metal top hat is about 1/4 inch wide and about 1/4 inch thick. So if it's inverted, and you can think of it as a top hat, the brim is this bit. When it's inverted around the right way, the brim goes at the top of the block. So what happens is, why it's done like that is for two reasons. One is for sealing, and the other one is to prevent another problem that happens with the OEM liners that come out of the factory 35 years ago. They can sometimes come loose and rattle up and down. So as the piston goes up and down, so does the cylinder liner. The cylinder liner can go up and down as much as 1/1000th or 2/1000th of an inch, and that's just enough to get water sucked in from the cooling system. So top hatting is the way to solve it. So what I've got back, I delivered to them what they call a short engine. A short engine is the block with the pistons and the crankshaft, nothing else. They pull all that apart, they bore out the block, they put in new cylinder liners, put all the old bits back again, and bore the new cylinder liners to the correct size of the old pistons, so you don't even have to change the pistons, which is pretty good. And they put a new set of rings in, of course, and they hone the bore and blah, 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 bearings and so on. So that's what I've got back. So now I'm in the process of putting the engine back together, which will probably take a while. So that's a long story.
Yes, it explains everything. I suppose they call that a hat job, do they? Hat trick?
It certainly is a hat trick, all 8 of them.
Cheerio, John. Cheerio, Laurie. See you soon.
Yes, cheers, Drew. And John, as a matter of interest, diesel-electric locomotives, the EMD engines have a removable liner as well. So basically, when these engines go in for major overhauls, they just pull the liner out. You can do it in half an hour, would you believe? Replace a whole cylinder liner, con rod and piston. So how's that in efficiency of design?
You must have wandered down to the workshops a lot, Laurie, to know all that.
Oh no, well, one, I was interested, and two, I also used to, when I was injured, they put me as in the workshops, just moving engines and that around in the maintenance area while I was recovering from my injuries from that prang. So I spent about a couple of months working in the South Island, what was called the Shed Bull, that just moved engines around for the fitters.
Well, good on you.
A bit more news for you, Laurie, on that. It's good to know. That concept of swapping liners around was also part and parcel of the old Vanguard sedan, the English Vanguard sedan, and what would you call it, the country version, it doesn't matter. Anyway, the Vanguard had, it was a 4-cylinder engine with removable liners, and that's exactly right. You just pull the liner out, put a new one in. So it's certainly not a new concept.
Now, I think the Fergie engine might be one of those too, John.
That I can't answer. It's possible, but I've not heard anything about that in all of my travels, but it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I just don't know about it.
Yeah, I think it was fairly common in some of the bigger diesel engines. It's certainly common in marine engines that use the big diesels. But I had the experience when I was at South Island doing the workshops there, that workshop foreman come over and he said, X36 just in the steam pit, bring it around, put it in the Road 7. Well, unbeknown to me, the engine had been cleaned, which are just labourers that do it. And they get in there with steam cleaners and they wash all the oil and grease and that down before it goes into the shops. Well, what I didn't know was that there was a standing order that the engine had to be running when they did this. The reason being that they're a V-type engine and the exhaust actually comes out through the top of the V. And what tends to happen, mainly due to lack of maintenance, is the seals become leaky. So any water pooling on top of the engine had the capacity to get into a cylinder. So, lo and behold, I go out, start up X36, and it went, bang. Yeah, water in the cylinder, put a hole in the top of the system, stuffed the lining and bent the con rod.
Yeah, shit can happen. I heard a story which I think was really sad but interesting. Four-wheel drive club some years ago, somebody had a Discovery, I don't know, Discovery 2 or a Discovery 3 or something, and it must have been fringe season or winter, not sure, but this particular person was driving the vehicle up an extremely, rutted and severe road, and he got into a situation where the vehicle simply fell on its side. So no one was injured, but the car, instead of being vertical, flipped over and it was lying on its side. So on the face of it, yeah, not a problem. Easy, we'll, with a winch or something, haul it back up again, continue on our way. What they didn't realise is when it fell over into the side, it fell into a puddle, which is, 3 or 4 inches deep, no big deal, except for the fact that the engine was running and it sucked in the water from the puddle and it was goodbye engine. How about that one?
Oh, I can well see it. And with diesel, well, as you know, diesels operate at very high compression, and in addition to that, water or any sort of fluid simply doesn't compress, with the results as I just sort of outlined. But I remember a T-class actually cracking off cylinder liner once, and that did a lot of damage as well. But of course these things happen, and especially when you're dealing with very, very large engines, as this is the case. And when I relate this story to someone, they think, oh, well, wouldn't the starter motor, just seize up and not try to start the engine? And I said, well, first of all, the engine starter, there's no glow plugs in these engines. They operate from pure compression. And the second issue with them is that the main generator is what's used as a starter motor for the purpose of starting the engine. So effectively, you have a 2,200 kilowatt generator used as a starter motor on the engine. And a little bit of water in a cylinder is not going to stop that from turning.
Yeah, exactly right. The other thing with big diesels too, Laurie, they start them with compressed air. So usually there's a big air receiver down the back of the huge engine somewhere, particularly a ship's engine or something like that. And it's full of a large quantity of compressed air, and they feed that into the cylinders to get it started. I was looking at a thing on YouTube the other day, large engine starting. There's this thing in Denmark, which is part of their power station. And this engine was, what was it? It was massive. It was 1,000 litres, something like that. The crankshaft, just the crankshaft without big ends, bearings or anything else, just the crankshaft weighed 140 tonnes. They fire this thing up and it sort of goes grug, 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 grug. Finally bursts into life. It's quite amazing. Yeah, so fascinating things, engines. Anyway, there you go.
Yeah, well, they come up with a very, very clever system in actual fact, because what the procedure was that if you had an engine that was in fact using the main generator as a starter, each pot had its own drain cock on it, and if the engine had been shut down more than 8 hours, what you had to do was open up all these cocks on the engine, crank it over a few times, dot prime the engine, keep the lay shaft back, and then go and examine to see if any water or fluid come out of the drain cocks. If everything was fine, you'd do them up again, and then you would do a normal engine start. But of course this all takes time and quite a bit of messing around, as you can well imagine. So GM come up with this idea called, well, in any case, I had to go to an electric starting system utilising starter motors, because they started fitting alternators as main generators. So in other words, instead of a DC generator, there was an alternator, and they could not double as a starter motor. So they came up with this idea of using 2 starter motors rather than 1. And if the engine hydraulic, 1 starter motor didn't have enough energy to keep the thing turning. So in other words, the motor would stall, the fuse would blow. And what happened is that with these is that the first starter motor would slowly crank the engine, so you'd go brr, brr, brr. Then the second one would kick in, and with the second starter motor, that was enough to kick over the engine. And so the beauty of the system was that unless the first starter motor went through turning the engine over through, I think, about 4 or 5 rotations or crankshaft rotations, then the second motor would kick in and then start the engine. And the starter motors were surprisingly small too for the size of engine that they were starting, but it was rather unique because you didn't have to go through draining cocks or opening up all these valves and that sort of thing to check for fluid in the cylinders. One starter motor simply stalled, 2 starter motors would kick it over.
Very clever idea. So if the first one stalled, you knew that there was fluid in the cylinders, and then you do the drain cock exercise.
Well, if one motor stalled, the drain cocks were still there, but basically if one starter motor stalled, you would suspect water in the cylinder. If it blew the fuse, and the fuse was, I think, about 1200 amps on each starter motor, so that's an enormous amount of current, as you can imagine. So you've got two starter motors drawing about 1200 amps each. So if the first starter motor would stall, I think the later refinement was the electronics detected that, and then what would happen is that the second starter motor would not simply kick in. So it disrupted the cycle. So therefore the first starter motor would just sit there, it would stall, and the worst case scenario is you blow the fuse, but at least you don't destroy the engine.
Yeah, quite a system. Well, it's very interesting that you went down to the workshops and had a play starting some of these big diesels. That's a good thing. Congratulations. So you've actually got some grease on your hands. Well done.
Oh, actually, as a driver, you had to know how to start and stop them. It's just that having that experience down the workshops enabled me to see them really getting, engine overhauls and things like that. And those big engines are fascinating. I'll tell you what, though, you wouldn't want to be a first-year apprentice because if something catastrophic did happen to the engine, and there'd be bits of metal and that all through it, guess who gets to crawl into the crankshaft with all the grease and oil to pick all the bits out? It's not the driver, it's not the workshop foreman, but you guessed it, it's the first-year apprentice.
It's all character building stuff for the apprentices. Wonderful. Yeah, look, it's all pretty interesting. I'm a bit fascinated by them as well. I have to say that some of the larger engines. I mean, here in Australia, I haven't seen anything really big. I think the biggest one I've seen is probably about a 6-cylinder that might have weighed, 3 or 4 tons, something like that. Not very big at all in the scale of things, but certainly big enough. Piston diameter would have been 6 or 7 inches, something like that. So yeah, it's all pretty interesting, and they're great when they start. In fact, there was a YouTube clip which amused me. Some American idiots had I think it was a diesel, and they were trying to get a huge amount of power out of it. They had some sort of energy sink on the end, I don't know what it was, and it was hammering away. Yeah, this is great. Suddenly, exactly what you said, there's this humongous explosion. the engine turned into these very small pieces of metal, people running everywhere. It's rather good.
Well, I've seen failures in engines. There's 3 basic manufacturers where engines ended up in locomotives in Australia, and probably the 2 most common one was either EMD, which is a GM engine, or Elco, which is they were mainly seen in New South Wales and South Australia. Victoria never bought any Elcos, but the Elcos were a 4-stroke engine, and subsequently maintenance on them was a hell of a lot higher than the EMD 2-stroke engine. And EMD keep things fairly simple too. I've actually got videotapes here. In fact, next time I'm down your way, I'll show you these, of these engines running with the rocker covers off, and you can actually see the engines running. In actual fact, although they're a 2-stroke engine, they actually have exhaust valves in them. They have 4 extractor valves that operate in the exhaust system, even though it's a 2-stroke engine. And basically there is just a cam. They're a V-shaped engine, as I mentioned before, a V16, a V12, a V8, and there was a V6. all based on the same design. And EMD made things fairly simple. The model number of the engine would consist of a three-letter group, which is basically how many cubic inches of displacement. So very commonly you had 645E engine, an EMD 645E. That would have 645 cubic inches of displacement. The later ones were 710 cubic inches of displacement. And of course, 16 times that sort of displacement. I don't think you need to be a mathematician to work out what brute horsepower that can produce. But the operation of the engines was very, very interesting, and GE had been a player later in the piece. But one of the big problems they had with the Elcos were the fact that they were a turbo supercharged engine, and the mechanics weren't worked out real well. The biggest problem that they had was turbo lag, and when you went to open them up, they would produce as much black smoke as a steam engine. In fact, the EPA are cracking down on them right now. And if you've heard in the media that they're starting to apply some of these standards to railway locomotives. GM doesn't have the problem, but Elco certainly does. And I have actually seen the results of a turbo supercharger blowing up in an Elco, and you wouldn't want to be anywhere in the engine room when that happened.
Yeah, that sounds particularly scary. Yeah, well, as I said, this